Welcome to Hot Flashes and Higher Self, the podcast where midlife becomes your awakening. I'm Soraya, a clinical hypnotherapist and rapid transformational therapist guiding women through perimenopause and beyond, embracing transformation rather than just symptom management. Each week, myself and inspiring women in wellness will dive into mindset shifts, somatic tools, spiritual practices, and the candid stories that move us towards our limitless selves. So, if you're navigating perimenopause, menopause, or simply just wondering what's next for me, then you're in the right place. Let's rise together, mind, body, and spirit. This is Hot Flashes and Higher Self. So today I'm really happy to be joined by Buffy, a nutritional therapist and health coach who supports women to feel well, nourished, and at home in their bodies, especially during midlife and times of transition. Buffy's work is deeply rooted in both personal experience and compassionate practice. After navigating her own health challenges around hormones, digestion, anxiety, and disordered eating, she was drawn into a more holistic way of understanding the body, one that goes beyond food plans or quick fixes, and instead focuses on nervous system support, self-trust, and listening to the body's wisdom. And what I really love about Buffy's approach is how grounded and gentle it is. She helps women move away from control, restriction, and pushing through, and instead reconnect with their bodies as allies, particularly during menopause and perimenopause, when so many of us are being asked to slow down, soften, and relate to ourselves differently. Buffy, I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
Okay, so first of all, Buffy, could you share a little bit about your own journey with health and well-being and what inspired you to become a nutritional therapist and health coach?
Yes. So I actually started off life professionally as a violinist, musician. I was a freelance violinist from leaving college in 2000, and then fast forward to I qualified about 8 years ago. So fast forward 4 years before that, and I started a course doing a diploma in naturopathic nutrition. The reason for that was for all sorts of reasons. One is I wanted to have a little bit more control over my diary and my working hours and not sort of be here, there and everywhere with a family, etc., etc. And two, through, like you mentioned, a sort of discovery of health and how you can really enhance it and turn things around. I just got a little bit more and more fascinated. I was actually kind of welcomed into the world of complementary therapies through a homeopath who, at the time, I was working with on various things, but growing up I had an early diagnosis of a thyroid condition, which was an autoimmune situation, and some of the kind of symptoms of that were a little bit kind of extra challenging for the teenage years, I would say, sort of being lethargic, mood was extra challenging, cravings for all sorts of energy foods. I was away at boarding school at the time and I had a thoroughly fun time with lots of really beautiful humans, and at the same time when you're at boarding school you're kind of left to fight, to sort of find your way around certain things. And when you're away at school, boarding school, I think that food plays quite a big part. It's quite common for quite a lot of girls who are growing up away from home to sort of find situations where they're sort of trying to sort of soothe themselves that they might otherwise have not kind of come across if they were in the family home type thing. Was quite common, and so alongside the thyroid condition, sort of some sort of longer term unwanted eating habits came on. You learn that food is comforting, and of course food is comforting, that's one of its great pleasures, but at the same time that lack of energy and then that sort of natural inclination to reach for those foods that so many people can relate to, whether it's because it's processed so highly palatable or like high sugar so that you get like a little bit of a kind of pick me up when you're exhausted or whatever it is. That all happened, and I didn't really realize that was just, I don't think anyone gave quite as much thought to that sort of thing at that point. But it played into the thyroid condition, and those habits actually inhibited how I was feeling. Fast forward, and alongside homeopathy, I just became more interested in fitness, in brain clarity, in almost a digestive system. I didn't even realize that was something that was sort of perhaps sluggish and slowing me down. Anyway, a friend of mine said, go for it, be a nutritionist, or at least do the course, because it's something that you're equally passionate about to music. So I think, having had the privilege of having a job that was so fun, it was going to be tricky to find an alternative job that was as fulfilling, and it was all about that side of things. And she was right. It was great. The add-ons of supporting with coaching and I did quite a few bits of disordered eating qualifications on top, because it became really clear to me that a lot of the people who were coming to see me, not necessarily to severe extents, but their relationship with the way they feed themselves wasn't calm. It wasn't peaceful. There was a lot of overthinking, there was a lot of head noise, there were a lot of habits that they found themselves stuck with. And it's a very sensitive area to deal with. There's a lot attached to the way that we eat, how we feed ourselves, what we put on our plate, even the way we eat it. Do we eat standing up? Do we eat on the run? Do we eat out of a packet? Do we eat on our own? Do we eat with other people? Blah, blah, blah. So many things have a really big impact. And so the extra bits of coaching qualification was really to help people help themselves, and to understand a little bit more about where it's all come from. So, and I'm slightly, I never stop learning with reading and doing courses and talking to other professionals about this, because I think, to a certain extent, particularly when women get to this middle age part of life, and in a way it's super empowering, because people know who they are, they know what they want, they've been through a lot. Most people have had some pretty big life experiences by that point. There's a sort of confidence that comes with that, but quite often with the challenges that come with that, old habits or insecurities or doubts about other things or frustrations about certain things sometimes start to rear their head.
Yeah. So, that's really interesting, Buffy. I just wanted to go back to the thyroid condition you had. So you had that from as a teenager, is that right?
Yeah. When I was about 15, it's that classic thing. People are kind of constantly noticing that you're tired or lazy, or whatever it is that is picked up on. I sort of really just want to fall asleep in the middle of the afternoon, but yet wasn't sleeping very well. It was just a kind of, certain things just weren't quite right. I was carrying extra weight, not to an excessive amount, but I was pretty sporty, and did lots of movement, but just wasn't very well. I think I went home for the holidays, and my mum was like, something's not quite right. So she did her own research, went to the GP, who was like, no, this doesn't come up, this isn't an early life thing. Anyway, thanks mum, because she sort of pushed for them to do a thyroid panel, and it was all completely out of whack. And what had actually happened was I had Graves' disease, which sounds dreadful, but it's just it's an autoimmune thyroid condition. And I had a strange kind of presentation where the symptoms of having an underactive thyroid, as in the lethargy and the weight gain, and I had a couple of extra slightly strange things. One of my eyelids was quite droopy, and but then I also had some of the symptoms of having an overactive thyroid. So my heart rate was extremely high, and I used to tremor quite a lot. But being a violinist at that point as well, I remember my teacher kind of assuming it was nerves. And obviously there's a bit of that going on. So there was a whole kind of mishmash of stuff. And it was really a few years after being I was on a kind of mix of hypo and hyper medication, that a specialist was recommending that I needed to come off the carbimazole because further on down the line it can affect fertility and all sorts of things, something that I wasn't told at the time. And it was recommended to me that I had the radioiodine treatment, which then, I mean, on reflection, as a personal choice, I probably wouldn't have done that now. But at the time, that was what was recommended.
That's right.
And then it takes away, it kind of kills too much of your thyroid gland. So then you are forevermore going to be, if left to your own devices, hypothyroid. So you go lethargic, etc. That bucket of symptoms. So you're on thyroxine then to various different levels to bring you back. I actually think I'm super lucky to have had that when I was younger because it's fully controlled and I've done quite a lot of kind of understanding health-wise around it and feel great on it. Which I think for a lot of women, the thyroid starts to struggle as they get to middle age or beyond. And that's brutal because everything starts to struggle at that point as hormones drop and everything can become a little bit overwhelming. So if your thyroid joins the party as well, then that issue of, well, what brings a lot of people through my door is the desire to find more energy, have a healthy weight loss program, etc., etc. So it's a kind of mixed bag.
So you had the thyroid condition from the age of 15. So when you became an adult and trained in nutrition, did you find the difference? Did you see it improved your energy levels?
Yes. I mean, by that point, what was going on for me personally was, because it's quite a few years later, I probably started to retrain sort of in my late 30s. So that's quite a long time after teenage years. But what I had noticed is that slowly over time, the level of the dosage of thyroxine that I was being prescribed on as a result of regular blood tests was just slowly creeping up. There were a couple of kind of fluctuations for the 2 pregnancies I had for my daughters, but they tended to go like down again after the pregnancies, but always just a little bit higher than they were before. A little bit like when people lose weight, actually. You lose the weight, and then if you're going to put it on, you tend to kind of go a bit more. Anyway, I never thought of that analogy before. Anyway, I just didn't really want it. It concerned me that if I was going to just slowly, as I get older, increasingly go up by 25 micrograms, ago, where was it going to stop, and how much was I going to need, and was that a problem? I didn't really trust this. I didn't really trust everything because as a teenager, I'd just been told to go on this medication. I'd never been at anti-medication. And then suddenly was told that carbimazole long term would damage my fertility. So I thought, well, maybe there's something going on here. So it was a kind of a quest to find out more and then find out what I could do as well. And I think that was just a bit of a roller coaster. It wasn't about deep kind of studying at that point. Even for myself, I realized that if I cut out foods that weren't great for me, that in itself I felt better for. So it wasn't even necessarily just thyroid related. It was just a sort of slow burn, if you like, of just kind of going, well, when I have that, I don't feel so good. When I have that, and just slowly making changes and then going to college and finding out the science behind it.
Okay. Yeah, no, it did. Thank you for sharing your journey. It's really interesting to see how you got where you are now and how it obviously helps you as well. So your work brings together nutrition, mindset, nervous system support, and self-compassion. How do you weave together the physical body with emotional and inner well-being in your approach when you work with your clients?
Well, when I first meet somebody, everybody is completely unique. There might be things that people have got shared experiences with, but I offer 3 or 4 different program lengths depending on what it is that somebody brings that is sort of troubling them with, or how long it is that it's been kind of going on. When I kind of meet that, so it's important to meet each client where they are and where the teaching side of it comes in, I guess, is is that people have lost connection with themselves quite a lot of the time. That's not necessarily on a deep level. That's right down to learning how to listen to themselves, trust themselves to listen to themselves. You take appetite, for example. Most of us have lost the ability to be able to read our hunger or fullness cues from a really, really young age. And that's from attentive parents who want you to eat enough so that you sleep enough right from a really young age. You think about those babies who are being fed, very rarely breastfed babies, just because you can't kind of quantify it in the same way. But sometimes if I remember when I was feeding my own daughters the odd bottle, and they, when they've had enough, they push it away. A baby pushes it away when they don't want it. But as soon as you get to kind of weaning and learning to eat, there's quite a lot of, no, just one more mouthful, just have one more mouthful, which is kind of all of that. So most people would feel like they are full when they're actually kind of, when they're uncomfortably full almost. So it's about revisiting, looking out for satisfaction, kind of when you're nourished feelings, rather than just, I need to undo my top button of my trousers because I've eaten too much type thing. So it's not just about food though. Sometimes it's about relearning how not to push through all sorts of situations. So when everybody walks around constantly, oh goodness, I'm so tired, I'm exhausted, I'm this, I'm that, it's like, oh, I only had 4 hours sleep last night, as if that's somehow a good demonstration of how hard somebody's working, or how stretched they are, or how much they've sort of wrung themselves out, or whatever. And that's just a kind of societal pressure, or it's the life of a young mum, or whatever it is. But learning how to slowly, even if it's just a small nod in the right direction when we're exhausted, sit down for a minute. Or if we're thirsty, go and get some water, rather than just sort of pushing through. Or or if we're not enjoying a conversation, politely removing ourselves from it rather than staying in it and getting really wound up. It's kind of boundaries as well as habits and all these sorts of things. And the way that this feeds through into other parts of programs is that it's when somebody is just in a daily practice of just quietly listening to their own instincts on what they want, they start to care about themselves a little bit more. They just start to notice. So this whole kind of, look after yourself, take care, self-care, all this sort of stuff. For somebody who's not in a great place with themselves, just sort of telling them to sort of, look after yourself. But it's like, that's not going to happen. You need to start off by just being interested in yourself. Just be interested in what it is, notice what you need, and try and go some way to meet that, So that's sort of part of it. Sometimes it's about a lack of confidence of what actually somebody's own sort of knowledge about what is good for them or what isn't good for them. Some people come feeling quite ashamed of, and quite often it's coming ashamed of perhaps how they feel they might be feeding their children, but actually it comes down to their own confidence about themselves. They might have grown up in a household where cooking was resented, or food was a stressful thing, and they kind of carry that. They're aware that they carry it and they don't want to carry it anymore. So it all gets weaved. Like I say, it's every session is meeting the client where they are with what they've come from, and it's a mixture of handing out. Sometimes there'll be more exercises to help with habit change, or self-reflection, or movement, or with a bit of nutrition. And other times it might be that we have a deep dive into their weekly patterns and look for ways that it can be slowly changed, potentially, rather than like a big kind of, right, that's it, I'm never doing this again, I'm never doing that. I always encourage just slowly, because if it's slowly, it will stick. So some people hit the floor running, and
Hmm.
others it can take a lot longer.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I just want to go back on the point when you're talking about listening to the body's signals and ask, why do you think it's so important in healing, especially in midlife with women? We had this conversation kind of before we started recording. So yeah, I wanted to go back there.
Well, the body is trying every day we wake up with a new kind of it's the most forgiving thing ever, that it doesn't matter
Mm,
what we do to our bodies, it tries constantly
mm,
to be the best version of itself that it can, like,
mm,
and so we can never really know unless we've just got a specific thing which is hurting us, or we're getting a pain somewhere, or we've got to, the body will be prioritizing all sorts of things in the background that we don't know about.
mm,
So when we get a symptom of something, quite often the body's already done quite a lot to try and sort that out for us before. So just noticing rather than pushing through um, is a sort of the first step, I guess, to letting the body kind of crack on and do what it wants to do. Um, when we're what we were talking about earlier was that kind of slight pressure sometimes on busy middle-aged women um, who are juggling quite a lot and quite often not putting themselves on the table quite at the same proportion as others. Sometimes it's not possible, sometimes it's more possible, but sort of pushing through. Um, so I guess one of the first steps in feeling good is just addressing that, which might show up in pushing through with not having very good work boundaries, or whether it's pushing through with always being the person who picks up other balls without, feeling like you should be the person to sort of solve all the problems for all the people.
mm.
It's about sort of catching each. Again, that's what I mean about meeting each person where they are. Sometimes culturally, it's quite challenging. Sometimes in certain situations, extra responsibilities land on mums
The
to
moms, yeah. Hmm.
do, go the extra mile. Um, and it depends what within a family, what did their mum um, demonstrate. I think a lot of the time that people I've spoken to in their sessions will talk about that, they're trying to do everything that they saw their mum do, and
Hmm.
they're also now trying to do extra things. So it's possible that their mum didn't work as many hours as they did, and it's possible that they maybe had a little bit more help than they did, but whether it's for financial reasons or just trying to live up to that societal con, if you like, that it's possible to have everything. You can do this and you can do
Mm,
this and you can do this.
yeah.
That quite quickly becomes a should, and then if you don't, it's all of that.
But it's also a cycle, would you say, Buffy? Like, our moms or the moms, they probably struggled as well, but didn't show it because they had to
Yeah.
think from their moms and then their moms, and it just passes down through generations. And then you get to a
Yeah.
point when, you need
A
to
lot
stop
of
it.
the time, it's about not. We grow up with certain values and stories about
Mm,
things, and that's completely fine. It's completely normal. It's just that quite often those aren't ever rechecked in on as to whether or not they
mm,
actually still apply, or whether we even agree with them anymore. Quite often
mm,
we can realize, if we go back to food, for example, quite a lot of the time when people are struggling with overeating, for example, they in the background they've still got, without their awareness, we need to finish everything that's on your plate,
mhm,
or you mustn't waste it because of the situation. Some people don't have what you have and you're lucky, so you
mhm,
should. It's rude not to finish what your plate, or conversely, it's greedy to have another thing of, it could depends. People are dealing with all sorts of different things.
mm,
Those teachings and habits and values that we have from very, very young, they're not going to go anywhere unless they're reevaluated. So quite often with people in conversation, it will come up, oh no, I can't do that because of X. And so in a coaching situation, it's kind of like, is that true? Is that actually still true? Do you as an adult or as a mum now yourself, do you actually, is that what you think? Oh no, it isn't. I don't. So then it's a question of just being really aware of when these things come up, because they can be sometimes the barrier or the blocks, without us realizing to why it's so easy to get stuck. Um, Sometimes it's super quick, and with the what I do notice is that with younger clients, so a lot of my clients are sort of 40 plus, but I do have clients who are sort of in their early 20s, and if they're at a good place to really engage with sessions, their um, their turnaround, that happens quite often quite a lot quicker, and that makes sense because they've had a couple of decades less of being entrenched in that
Mhm.
thinking and those patterns. And
Well, it's programming, isn't it? It's the deeply embedded programming we have, from seeing what's going on around us and taking it in as being the truth of how it should be, the perception.
yeah,
But I guess it's about, changing that. So going to my next question. So how do patterns like restriction, people pleasing, stress or disconnection from the body tend to show up in women's health? And how can you shift that?
well, I think burnout, that feeling of burnout and
Mm,
exhaustion, people pleasing is a real thing. Um,
mm,
but to touch on that, I remember listening to a podcast years ago, um, about a discussion on people pleasing, and how actually, when you think about it, it's not really people pleasing. It's not actually necessarily a kind thing to do for the other person. If we're putting, say, for example, if somebody was to invite you to dinner and you didn't really want to go, or you didn't feel up to it, or whatever your reason, and you kind of go, oh, but I really should go. I mean, I've told them I'm going to go, but I really don't want to, and blah, 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 all of that stuff. Actually, quite often, there are always ways of saying no that don't have to be rude and don't have to be
mm.
offensive or impolite. And actually, if you were the person who was cooking dinner for 6 people and you knew that 3 of those people didn't actually want to be there and come for dinner, you wouldn't. That's not actually very kind for them to push through and come and have your dinner that you've slaved over for. That sort of thing. So sometimes when people pleasing comes up in sessions, it's like, well, is it what actually would be people pleasing? What is the kindest, for a kind of boundaried, what is a kind, polite boundary for both sides, and just to sort of dig into, and that will go back to what they've been brought up with. I was definitely brought up, right, when you've accepted an invitation, you go. There's no kind of changing of plans. That would be rude. This was this, blah 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 blah. So flexible thinking. I had very strong, for good reason, values sort of instilled to me. But actually, as you sort of start to think for yourself and realize that you're still
Mm,
kind of putting yourself through, I mean, that was just one sort of slightly silly example, but when you're still putting yourself through the same rules, if you like, the
yeah.
same shits, without actually stopping and kind of going, well, hang on a minute, what, there's all of that. It shows up with anxiety quite a lot of the time. A lot of the time, um, women in particular kind of living in fear of judgment about all sorts of things, whether it's what they look like or how their children behave, or whether or not they've contributed enough to the school tombola, or whether they have enough. There's everybody's got a different sort of um, mix of anxiety and
Hmm.
emotional stuff. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
So, I mean, the way my understanding is you help your clients shift the way they see things by kind of looking at different perspectives and kind of reframing things. Is that right?
That's definitely a big part. It's definitely a big part, and there's a lot of presumption as well. I've so often find myself talking to people about, let's put everything on the table before we just presume that we know what's going on here. So if somebody
Mm,
Again, taking a really silly examples quite often, just to get people to kind of open up their thinking on things. You know, if somebody is a bit snappy with you in a shop, you know, for example, or at the school gates or whatever it is, does that immediately mean that they think you're a dreadful mum, or that you're this, or you're whatever it is? No, they've probably, you know, they've had probably a very stressful drop off themselves. They might be really exhausted. They might have other things to do.
Mm.
We tend to make everything about ourselves and think that it's
Hmm.
all
The main character
um,
of the story.
well, and you know, that's normal. At the same time,
Mm.
sometimes it's really quite helpful just to kind of go, actually, there are
Hmm.
40 squillion other reasons why this could be where it
Yeah.
is. I've got no way of knowing which one it is. And so for that reason, kind of, I'm out. You know what I mean? It's like I'll think about
Mm.
it when I really know what's going on, rather than the kind of fear all the time. It's exhausting. It's just
Of
exhausting.
course, it is tiring. I think, we've got like 65,000 thoughts every single day. So that's a lot of thinking, and a lot of it worry about nothing really. Catastrophizing.
Well, that's the thing as well, you know. And again, when people's your brain just will fast forward, shortcut to the things that you normally think about. So it's quite
Mm.
important when we're on that kind of train, um, to be aware that we're on that train and actually consciously choose to jump off. Like,
Exactly.
so, you know, pick out the practitioner who I mentioned, who I worked with years ago. Is this guy called Matt Pepper, and he actually wrote a book all about kind of happiness and various techniques,
Hmm.
called Happiness: The Inside Job, for anybody who wants to read it, by Matt Pepper. It's a great book. Um, and he talks about these two different trains. You know, you've got the groovy train. Let's get on the groovy train of thoughts, because when we have a good thought, um, it won't take long for another positive thought to come and attach itself to that thought, and then off you go. But similarly, if we're on a kind of anxious thing and our brain's always looking out for what's going to go wrong, or what might this, or then similarly we'll jump on that train, which is
Mm.
never going in a nice direction. So
Yeah, well, that's the reticular activating system. So the more we see something, the more of it will come towards us. It,
exactly. So we want to be
yeah.
on the lookout for the good things. I quite often
Hmm.
get really, one of my favorite exercises to give people who are feeling funky is,
Hmm.
you know, we're all on our phones constantly, but with the phone, when you're out and about or around, just take anytime you see something that just brings you some joy, whether it's the sight of it snowing, whether it's the sight of snow, or whether it's the color of something, or it's a flower, or it's a something. Just take a picture of it and pop it in an album, and slowly you'll build an album of all these things that you just like. I encourage them
Mm.
not to be people or food related.
Hmm.
But then slowly it means that as you're out and about, you find yourself
Mm.
looking out for things
Hmm.
that bring you joy, rather than
Mm. The negative things,
putting
yeah.
your brain on doing anything else. It's like little things,
Yeah.
but
I think, yeah, that's a great tip. I mean, when I work with clients, we have I encourage them to have gratitude journals just to, remember what it is every day that they're grateful for. But that's a great tip as well, to go around and just spot things.
yeah, I think, and there's so much evidence, isn't there, about the gratitude thing. And I do a slightly different thing with clients on that, but a same kind of theme. I just we talk a little bit more, because a lot of people are finding it that they're feeling down about whatever it is that they've
Mm.
got going on. It's important to see what they're grateful to have,
Mm.
and they're also in this kind of stuck kind of place. So it's a
Mm.
combination of that. One of my favorite things, and again, I can't remember who I heard mention this, but I thought it was great, so I now use it. Um, at the end of every day, just have a look through the day, and what was difficult, what was hard, what but you did it anyway, that you managed to do it anyway, to kind of
Yeah.
build some confidence in the good things that you're doing, even when you feel like you're just not nailing it. So it might even be like, I don't know, you didn't particularly want to go and speak to somebody, but you did. You put your big girl pants on, and off you went. Or you didn't particularly want to choose to have salad for lunch and stuff, but you did, and you're glad that you did. So that's another angle on what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, the same kind of like the self-praise, like it's praising yourself. I think a lot
Yeah.
of us, even as adults, we're relying on external validation, and it's about realizing that it's more the internal validation, just telling yourself that you're doing well. I think that's much more powerful.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anyone, we've got the kind of capacity to
Hmm.
be the nicest person ever to ourselves, more than anyone else could ever be, because
Yeah.
we know what's going on all the time. And conversely, sadly, quite often we're the nastiest that we can be to ourselves.
I always
Um,
say that it's like, well, we're so kind to our friends and we're so mean to ourselves. You would never speak to your friends the way we speak to ourselves.
yeah.
You wouldn't want to be friends with yourself. So
Yeah, so
it's just,
again, it's like awareness, isn't it? It's like just notice, and you have to fake it to make it. Sometimes
yeah.
you're gonna have to take action before you feel like taking action. That
Mm.
is a thing, but it's the action that
Hmm.
leads to change.
Yeah.
So that's always it's like almost I was trying to say, but just try and enjoy that bit. Like just
Hmm.
try to just like just do it as an exercise. You don't have to, you don't have to
Yeah, completely. It's a habit as well, isn't it? It's like you said, you start it and then you kind of work on that and it becomes natural to you. That becomes your automatic, your autopilot as opposed to the negative side.
Yeah, and the other thing that's really important is when you do have a win, even if it's like the smallest win,
Yeah.
really acknowledge it to yourself. Don't kind of be
Mm.
that whole kind of, oh, well, I should have been doing that anyway, and if I should have done
Yeah.
it immediately, kind of like, no, 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 you got to feel the
Well
win
done. Yeah.
that you start to want that feeling of the win more than you want what could have been the alternative behavior type thing.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah. Good advice, Buffy. And how does working with the nervous system and root cause differ from purely willpower based or mental approaches to health?
I don't really believe in willpower. I
Mm.
think I just, yeah, that's yeah, I don't really buy into the willpower thing.
Mm.
I think we kind of go back upstream from that a little bit. And again, I'll never forget a coach who I had many conversations with years ago, and she was super helpful. Helen Bennett, her name was, and she always used to say um, that whenever she hears a client say "should," what she really hears is "I don't want to." So I really should go to the gym, or I should drink more water, or I should this, or I should that. Now, it might be that you do actually want to drink more water, but should is not an action word, and it's a kind of, shoulding on yourself is not going to get you anywhere. You're either going to choose, I am going to do this, or you're not. Like, are you going to go to the gym or not? And you might not want to go to the gym, but you might want the feeling after you've been to the gym. So just to get rid of the should and actually that kind of self-empowerment of making an actual choice. Um,
Mhm.
and this time of year is a nightmare for people shutting on
Mm.
themselves to do all sorts of things.
The New Year's resolutions of the new way of life, and that doesn't last very long, the willpower with that.
Willpower is that, yeah. I mean, there's a certain amount of momentum of enthusiasm at the beginning
Hmm.
of. Sometimes having the idea feels good,
Hmm.
um,
Mm.
but when you're making some sort of resolution or you're deciding that you're going to go for a goal, and quite often beginning of the year is when I do quite a lot of goal setting with people. When making that goal, so maybe it's that somebody wants to be able to run 10K by the time it's the end of February. It's like, okay, cool, but don't just picture kind of putting on your new lovely leggings that you just got for Christmas and your new trainers and then going out on a nice sunny day and everything being kind of hunky dory. As part of the process, you've also got to think about the days when it's really cold and it might be raining, but that's your running day, so you've still got to go. Or
Mm.
the time when you go out and it's then that you got to picture the whole thing to make it
Hmm.
realistic, so that when you then hit some of those hurdles, they
Mm.
don't completely throw you off because suddenly it's harder than you thought it was going to be. It just like, if that makes sense. So,
Of course,
and for
complete sense,
some,
yeah. But
you know,
but again, it goes back to understanding why they have those beliefs in the first place. So when we go back to talking about like the food, how people eat, the comfort eating. So in order to change, that's not the willpower. It's about addressing where that came from, right? That's what you're doing, and kind of reframing, looking at a different perspective.
Yeah. But looking at it, and sometimes not necessarily going in. I mean, sometimes people want to talk about it a lot, and they want to
Mm.
just process it because it helps them to kind of like then move it on.
Hmm.
Other people, it not so much. It's just a question of kind of going, yeah, that happened, but now what are we going to do? Let's like
Mm.
sometimes it's helpful not to dwell on that and just accept, that happened. I think that it's easy. I mean, parental relationships, mother relationships, all that sort of stuff could, historically can be really, really hard for
Mm.
everybody. And I don't know if you feel like this, but certainly the older I get, the more understanding you kind of realize that, well, of course, my mum, when she was 50, she was just trying to do her best gig.
Hmm.
As
Hmm.
a 50-year-old boy,
Well, yeah.
she'd not had teenager children before either. So it's kind of, but we feel like our parents should have everything sorted and just, you know.
Mm. But they're just humans like we are.
So it's
We're
kind
all
of getting to a
humans,
point.
yeah.
Like I can't think if it's one of the reasons why I don't work with like younger people as well. It's like if somebody comes and they've got issues going on with their parents when they're younger, it's like and they're struggling with that. It's like, well, kind of fair enough. But by the time you get to midlife and you've got your own family, you're making your own decisions. It's like, come on, you're going to make it's for you now. Like let's that happened, and that's nobody would wish discomfort on anyone else, but it happens, and now what, let's
You
try
have
and
to let go. Yeah.
let's try and make our own new.
Hmm. Not be defined by the past. I agree.
Yeah, just
And
but
and
it's
so
stressful, and it depends. Everybody's individual.
so many women feel stuck with symptoms like hot flushes, anxiety, or fatigue. How do you help clients uncover what's really driving those experiences beneath the surface?
So from a kind of more clinical perspective, like thinking more along like nutrition rather than the
Mm.
emotional
Hmm.
things going on in the background. When people's experience of menopause and symptoms that you talk about, quite often the greater or lesser extent that they struggle with quite often depends on their own personal levels of kind of inflammation within the body. Like how much pressure, if you like, is your
Mm.
system under, and that includes stress, um, systemic inflammation, other kind of chronic conditions maybe they've got, added to which diet and lifestyle choices, which might be draining their system rather than nourishing their system. So that's, ultra processed foods or alcohol or recreational smoking or whatever it is that they've got going on. There will be lots of different, it's not one or two things going on that will then play out in what our experience of these symptoms can be. Um, I always think one of the biggest kickers at this time of life is the way sleep gets interrupted. So it might be that by the time people have got to the menopause stage, they might be having slightly, their children might be a little bit older if they have children, and so any kind of disrupted sleep problems that they might have had from that, they've got their sleep back on track, but then the hormone fluctuations and waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and not being able to get back to sleep again, and racing heads and brain fogs and all that sort of stuff is, again, it's a frustration. It's one of the big things that comes up with clients, because they want to be able to sleep and get the rest that they need, which would help them, but their bodies are struggling with that. So approaching that is important, really, really important. And so sometimes it's simple, what seems quite obvious, like whether it's screen patterns and habits and what your actual sleep routines are, or whether it's general stress management to try and bring to calm the system a bit, what foods help, what foods don't, all sorts of things. The menopause and perimenopause symptoms are, I mean, it's basically, it could be anything, absolutely anything, because every part of our body, estrogen affects all the cells and all the functions of the body. So when we have the sudden drop along with the progesterone, etc., it affects everything. And then add to that the extra kicker of the drop of progesterone in our moods, and then where you feel, how you feel with your outlook has a huge impact then on choices that you might make. So if, for example, you're somebody who is in a situation where food has been a comfort and perhaps an overeating, soothing situation, and then we've got even lower moods due to sudden drops in hormones and all of that kind of chaos, and we might be struggling with not having enough sleep, and being sleep deprived is sort of has quite a few symptoms that are quite similar to being a bit drunk. You know, you just like when if you've been out and had a few drinks the night before, the next day you're going to crave sugary things, you're going to be a bit ratty, you're going to be all of those things. It's quite similar to if you've had no sleep.
Yeah.
So there's a whole kind of melting pot. Um, and it's a question of just seeing where the biggest bits are and just making small adjustments. Because the really cool thing is that even though these things, when you're looking at things naturally and you're looking at maybe deficiencies as well, that's another really important part. You know, you look at somebody's diet and quite often you can see immediately what they might be lacking in. Sometimes blood tests definitely play a part for seeing where somebody is with their iron levels, their thyroid, and all that sort of stuff. That's a whole different thing. But what's great about the process is that even though if you accept it's going to take a little bit of time, just by virtue of getting into the habit of actually making small improvements, that feels good when people start to kind of enjoy the process of looking after themselves. Even though you should obviously have the frustration of it taking a long time, that doesn't feel as stuck as just being stuck. It's that kind of feeling of, I always say it's a bit like being in a traffic jam. It's just that weird feeling. If you're in a completely stationary traffic jam and you've been there and you have been for like 25 minutes, even if you just move forward one car's worth, it just makes you, that feels good, just moving. It's the same sort of thing within somebody's journey. If they just start to feel like they've got some sort of movement, that's momentum.
And I guess there's also kind of like that sense of empowerment as well, you know, when you're going through all of this stuff and you're feeling awful, by coming to see you and actually making small changes and knowing that you can actually make yourself feel better. That's a great feeling there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like then small is the
Yeah.
thing. It's like we want it to be really small to start with, because another another thing that I try and encourage people to do when it's the right time is to start like what I call their daily minimal for them. So and preferably a morning habit. So what are their morning routine? Everyone's like, oh no, but I have to get up for the kids and after this and after that. It's like, yeah, you do, and you don't feel great doing that right now. So if we can get up 10 minutes earlier, just 10 minutes earlier, and know that within that 10 minutes you might do 5 minutes for yourself of stretching or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Each person, it's important not to sort of suddenly make somebody do yoga if they think yoga is the worst thing that's ever happened. It's not about that. Something so that whatever happens that day, you've done that 5 minutes for you, and you
Yeah.
definitely will feel different. I can promise that you'll feel different for having done something for yourself for 5 minutes than if you hadn't. Sometimes you
Yeah.
might be pissed off and you might be a little bit more kind of, well, now I've got even less time. You might go down that from time to time, but more often than not, you'll have started the day with putting something, you know, one of your needs or something that's good for your needs.
Yeah. I can definitely say that works because I did the same thing a few years ago. I started waking up earlier because I would just otherwise before that I used just to wake up and hit the ground running, like be doing 100 things, taking care of everyone else, and then I just rush through the whole day feeling really anxious, overthinking. But by waking up earlier, it was I think it was like half an hour earlier than I had to. I had that time to meditate, to read, and to kind of like get myself, you know, ready for the day.
Whatever it is that's your thing.
Yeah,
I think
but
it's
it
like,
helps.
yeah, it really does. Rangan
Mm,
Chastut talks about micro and macro stresses.
yeah.
Well, um, I'm sure loads of your listeners are familiar with his work, but that is another consideration as well. We quite often just add little micro stresses
Mm-hmm.
completely at our own will, but actually,
Mm.
by the time you've done 10 of those, that's going to drain your energy and drain your what I call resilience bucket quite significantly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, Yeah, no, I love it. It can take quite a while to find, for somebody to find their flow. Um,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's not always, it goes up and down depending on what
Hmm.
life's carrying on while they're trying to do all this, right? So
But I do think it's important to carve that time out for yourself. I feel as a woman, especially as a mom, we're doing so much for everyone else. It's so important to have that small time to yourself just to kind of really be with yourself and take care and fill up your cup.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. In your work, Buffy, what recurring themes or breakthroughs do you see when women move through perimenopause or menopause?
Well, that can be all sorts of things. Like it quite often, if the initial motivator was kind of weight loss related, then
Hmm.
that would play a part. But increased energy. One of the most exciting things for me though is the kind of confidence, um, sort of a sense of self connection and possibility of all of just being on their way. They were stuck
Hmm.
on their way, and that can be all sorts of things. It's been people who've left jobs they don't like and started again, or it might be people who've done X, Y, or Z for years because they always thought that they should, and they're actually like they've thrown that out and they've started something else. Or um, it's the confidence. I think confidence is confidence and self care and yeah, all sorts of things that you part of the process at the beginning through a questionnaire and through conversations to talk about all sorts of things that somebody might be putting up with, health wise or otherwise, that they almost haven't noticed anymore just because it's become so normal, that it doesn't flag. But it's not right. It's not right to have a headache at 4 o'clock every day, or it's not right to feel a sense of severe dread every time you go to the bus stop and on your way to X, Y, and Z. It's like slowly, slowly, slowly helping people to help themselves, um, is brilliant. I love it.
It's the kind of like a way for them to reconnect themselves, is that right?
Yes, and then there's some. I think there are a lot of people who, I couldn't put a date or a time specifically on it, but I don't think I'd ever really connected with myself until I don't know. As you go through the teenage years or the kind of 20s or whatever, I'm not even really sure what the time is, but I think it's a real privilege to be supporting somebody at a point where they sort of give themselves a bit of a shake and go, "Oh, hang on a minute, actually, I do, I do know." Quite often people won't even really know what they like, or they won't really
Mm.
know what they want, and that's fine. That's fine. It's just that's okay.
I think it's about working through that and for them to kind of connect with their own self, their inner kind of guidance, what they actually want, isn't it? Because they're so used to doing things for other people and, kind of going on with social norms that you forget what it is that you actually want. And in this time of our lives, we are at ready to kind of reconnect and be true to ourselves.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think everybody has got all the skills that they need. Everybody's got
Mm.
absolutely everything that they need within themselves to do it. So somebody,
Mhm.
eh, when you're working at something, it might be that at work they're incredibly organized or they're incredibly disciplined or whatever it is. But just when it comes to themselves, it's not the same. So it's
Mm.
kind of exploring what somebody's natural skill set is and applying it to themselves when you're making changes nutritionally as well. For example, it's like a lot of people know what it is that they want to do more of or less of,
Mhm.
but that's not necessarily being backed up by what's in their cupboards or their fridges or whatever. And so it's very hard to kind of go, well, I'm never going to. I don't really want to eat ultra processed foods anymore if the freezer is just completely full of them for whatever reason. Everybody's got to fall back on convenience food at some time. It's like life's busy. It's got to be a balance. That's essential. Otherwise, you're just creating a whole nother stress.
Mm.
But it's just about managing again managing your environment, if you like, managing your to be as supportive for you as well as all the other needs. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's little things. Little things make a really big difference.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Buffy. And so could you share one simple practice, whether nutritional, nervous system, or mindset based, that listeners could try today to feel more grounded in their bodies?
One habit.
Mm-hmm. One simple practice. So it could
One.
be nutritional, nervous system, or mindset based.
Well, one of the one of the simplest things to do that a lot of people struggle with is drinking more water.
Ugh.
Seem to find myself.
Especially when it's cold. I think it's much easier in summertime when you automatically want to drink more water, but when it's cold, it's kind of harder, I feel anyway.
Everything is so much easier when our bodies are hydrated. If
Mm-hmm.
there was just going to be one, if it was just going to be one thing, that would be the nutritional thing. Um, or an obvious one is um, add one more source of fiber to your plate each day
Mm-hmm.
or something. But the water thing is amazing because the effect on your digestion, your mood, your hunger, if you're dehydrated, quite often that's going to lead you to eat. But actually, what you need to do is drink, all that sort of stuff. That's hard. I talk too much. I'm coming up with one thing is quite tricky, but that's an easy one. And start small. If you don't drink any water at all right now,
Mm-hmm.
then start with half a cup across the day. Just start with that. It's going to be better than what you were doing before.
We're aiming for 2 liters. Is it 2 liters of water per day we're supposed to be drinking?
1.5 to 2, but that can
Mm.
be in various forms. It could be, and if it's cold, go warm water.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what I've been trying to do. I think warm water is better
Yeah.
for me during the cold climate.
Yes.
Um, and what's lighting you up most in your work at the moment?
I helping people make the changes that they want to do. That lights me up. I find it really inspiring. I feel good with when I'm working.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always completely straightforward, but feeling like you're supporting someone to make a difference that they really want to make is brilliant. So yeah,
Mm.
very really privileged with people sharing what it is that they're working at and being able to see them move forwards and just have
Yeah.
a different day to day. It's not like just a different relationship with themselves sometimes. Sometimes
Mhm.
when people are, if it's a really draining food, um, stressful situation, then seeing somebody let go of that is just amazing because to have to go
Mm.
through every day and your day being a good day or a bad day, depending on how, what you've eaten too much of, or what you haven't eaten, or how mean you've been to yourself, essentially, or whatever.
Mm.
It's a horrible, horrible place for somebody to go through their day on. So to lighten somebody's load, um,
Mm.
is a real privilege.
And going back to habits, do you have a personal daily habit or ritual that helps you stay connected to your body and inner wisdom?
I think I've got quite a few, but the morning 15 minutes to myself is completely it's a it's a non-negotiable for me. Even if I'm on holiday or wherever I am, I'll just I can't always do the full 15 minutes if sometimes
Mm.
but and if for some reason it's not being possible, then I try and go back at some point in the day and just take a minute, um, just so that I've sort of shown up. And it makes a big difference, but it just becomes it just becomes a non-negotiable after a while. But it wasn't easy when I first started doing that. I needed to build up streaks to encourage myself. I had an app that I followed which would cover a few different things, whether it was breathing or meditation or movement or stretching, and I definitely found that I needed to do that and have the kind of satisfaction of ticks across the thing, or whatever it is. That's all part of that's my
So it's a habit, isn't it? Once you do it over a certain time, you get used to it. It becomes part of your day.
yeah.
And if you could leave women listening with one message about honoring their body, power, and intuition in midlife, what would it be?
Trust yourself. Trust
Yeah.
yourself. You can trust yourself to follow your instinct. You'll be all right.
Yeah, love that. And I always ask these questions on the podcast. And what's something your body or intuition has been teaching you lately?
To drop my shoulders.
Oh,
to
okay.
breathe. Just that's always been a thing for me. If I check in with myself, I almost always can find that there's room just to that. So I try and do that.
And the breathing.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because we automatically have quite shallow breathing, and I also notice that when I get stressed, I just slow down the breath, and it's just automatic for me. I breathe through I just do a big breathing out, and that really helps me whenever I get stressed with the kids. It's just an automatic thing that I do. It does help.
Well, that's good. That's a brilliant example of kind of like what works for you. And I think it goes back for so many years. I remember my mum always used to say to me, if she could see that I was really kind of fuming about something, she'd say, go and stand on the front door and breathe in and out 10 times, and then come back in.
Oh.
But you'd go outside, you go, and then come back in. And it doesn't make a difference. But I'd never do it. But now, 35.
It's so funny because I'm trying to teach my kids that whenever they get stressed or angry, just to go, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So yeah.
But I think if I was going to go back and tweak that, I would have wanted to see her do it. Like I think that what I really need to do, as a conscious kind of practice, which I really like doing because it's a win for everyone, is not actually sort of preach it or teach it. Just do it, because you're being watched and noticed in everything that you do. So.
Oh, they see me. Trust me, Buffy. They see me when I'm stressed.
That's great. Well, it will be going in. You just have to trust that it's going in.
I do. I trust the process.
It's been so lovely to talk to you. So lovely.
Just one last question, Buffy, before you go. What does living as your limitless self mean to you right now?
I'm just really delighted to. I don't know. I'm a work in progress all the time. Everybody's a work in progress. So I think that that I'm just enjoying that. I'm enjoying that. I haven't always been massively kind to myself years ago. I don't think I ever expected to benefit myself so much from the process of retraining and learning and just working with people. That feels great, and something I'm super grateful that then translates to, I don't know, just my day to day.
We're always learning new stuff, right? Always expanding.
Always. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Buffy. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.
And speak to you soon, Buffy. Oh, before you go, also share with the listeners how they can reach you.
So quite simply, my website is buffyrowe.com, and everybody is welcome if they feel like they'd be interested to find out how I could help. There's a link on there for booking an introductory call, which is free. I can briefly explain more about how I work and how that could support you. So that's probably the easiest way of doing it.
Okay, perfect. All right then. Thank you, Buffy.
All right. Thanks so much, Soraya. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Hot Flashes and Higher Self. And if something in today's episode spoke to you and you're feeling ready for deeper support, then you can book a one-to-one session with me. I work with women around the world to help them shift from stuck to self-led. And if you're craving real connection, movement, rest and reset, then check out the women's retreats I host. They're a beautiful mix of healing, hot yoga, incredible food and soul-deep conversations and connections. And you can find all the details at www.ls-therapy.com, or come hang out with me on Instagram at Limitless Self Therapy. And you can also reach me directly anytime at soraya@lstherapy.com. I'd love to connect. Take care of you, fill that cup of yours, and remember, your next chapter is already unfolding.